Might as well start off with the commissioners first.
Michael Robershaw.
Walt Vesputa.
Drew Gunning.
Diana Ross.
Rick Miagioni, Katie, Secretary, and Scott Allen, Wetland Enforcement Officer. Start off with the Inland Wetlands, Tuesday, April 24th, 2007. Consideration of April 10th minutes. Anybody have anything to correct? Anybody?
No corrections to be made. I
No.
think that we've got.
Gonna make a motion. Anyone second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All set. Routine business. Correspondence. Have a magazine from Connecticut Wildlife. I'll pass this around. Got a letter from the state of Connecticut, Department of Environmental Protection, general permits for diversion of water. If anyone's interested, page, departments www.gov/DEP. The last one is a letter to the commission. This is for a reference permit number 250, parcel 63-1-1A, which is 620 Lambert Road. It was approved on October 7th, 2004. Says, dear Mr. Allen, it will soon be 3 years since the above lot was approved by Inland Wetlands Commission. I do not anticipate that any activity will be initiated on that lot within 3 years of its approval. Therefore, I hereby request an extension of the approval.
That's Woody D'Ambrosio. That's the lot that's in actually right next to, across from Shamrock Farms, from Jay Ewing's. I know, Diane, you were out on that site during the application process. So the permit's only good for 5 years total, so if he doesn't do anything, it's without any activity. I believe it ceases at that point, but I think if any activity starts, he can have an additional 5 years. I think permit's good for 10 years total.
So,
I mean, you can give a year, you can give 2 years, but 5 years is going to be will be the cutoff date at this point, unless they come back and ask for another extension.
right. So the most is 2 years? We're gonna need a motion for that, correct?
Correct.
Somebody want to make a motion to, well, first, is there any issues extending this permit?
I don't think there are, but I think if this is the one I'm thinking about, I did not vote to approve it, so I wouldn't probably vote to extend it.
I don't recall this one, so.
Site plan is attached there if somebody wants to refresh their memories.
have a question. If we don't give an extension, what happens to this approval?
He would have to start work within the 5 years, correct? Or within 3 years, so he doesn't lose his permit. So that's just, I would assume, putting a foundation is work.
On the other hand, we are very limited in not approving an extension. They have to meet certain criteria. There was an enforcement on the property, or the circumstances have changed significantly. And there's one other one. Do you remember what that one is?
If the plans change, yeah, that word, but they haven't. Nothing has changed at this moment.
Right, so I think, my understanding is you almost have to
Extend it.
extend
Yes.
it, yeah.
Right, that's what I'm saying, he didn't change anything, he's just asking for an extension. Everything remains the same. I mean, we could just do 1 year, and then he has to write another letter if he wants to come back.
I just want to
Yeah,
learn a little bit.
all right.
1 year might be appropriate.
We typically do 1 year.
Okay. Anybody want to see the site plan, or no? Would anyone entertain a motion for a 1-year extension?
I'll move to, or, I don't even know the wording.
Or just a 1-year extension?
I would move to give a 1-year extension to this application.
Okay, have a motion, do we have a second? Michael, second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Okay.
Motion carries 4-0-1.
I'll give you this. Okay, new application, 460 Cart Lane.
Where-
The applicant withdrawn the application, correct? So, that one's out until he resubmits it. Next for discussion, Sun Hill Estates. Anybody here for Sun Hill Estates?
Sunrise Hill.
Oh, Sunrise Hill Estates.
All set?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening. Good evening. My name is Joe Porto. I'm an attorney. I practice law with the law firm of Perrette, Porto, Parisi, and Caldwell, and we maintain offices in Hamden. And my office represents the applicant, Sunrise Hill Estates. As our application notes, we are proposing to extend an existing sanitary sewer line that currently stubs on the Hine Farm property. The sewer line, in our proposal, will be extended southwesterly through Derby to Orange and ultimately cross under Route 34 to service an age-restricted community development, which we propose to build on Route 34 at the corner of Grassy Hill Road. The reason we are before you this evening is that there are some pockets of wetlands on the Hine property. The sewer line will not run through the wetlands, but nor will it disturb the wetlands, but rather the proposed work will be done in the upland review area. I would also like to point out for the benefit of the commission that the applicant has already appeared before the Derby Wetlands Commission regarding a very similar application, and that hearing was well received. The matter has been continued to, I believe, the 9th of May to allow that commission to inspect the site, and your file should reflect that we have provided notice to this commission as required by law, given that there's another town that abuts this property within 500 feet. Also with me this evening is the project engineer, Robert Weway of Spody and Associates, who will be able to explain to you our plan in greater detail. And obviously we'll be around to answer any questions the commission may have.
Thank you. I- Okay.
Okay, good evening. My name's Robert Weway. I'm a professional engineer and principal with the firm of Codespodian Associates. And as Mr. Porto had pointed out, we have an application before this commission tonight for the extension of existing sanitary sewer line to service the Sunrise Hill properties located adjacent to Route 34. The application that's before the commission tonight deals with the Hine property per se. And all told, there's approximately 800 lineal feet of sewer line construction proposed across that site and Route 34. Now, out of that 800 lineal feet, approximately 110 feet are located within your 100-foot review area. And if you take a look at those smaller color copies that we just passed out, I think that'll give you a better idea as to the activity area with respect to where the sewer line is proposed. As you can see also, what we try to do in that area is to put the sewer line installation in an area that will result in the minimal amount of disruption to the area. So for the most part, if you take a look on those plans, what you'll notice is that the sewer line is either going underneath existing bituminous / gravel driveway boards in very close proximity to the paralleling the edge of it. So that'll facilitate the installation of sewer line and maintaining the existing vehicle traffic that goes through the back area that services the parking area and storage area back in the city of Derby. We've also provided, as part of the submission set of drawings, detailed erosion control plan, which has your typical S&E measures consisting of silt fencing, mud tracking pads, and a dewatering basin detail. Yeah, I think with that, it's a pretty simple and straightforward application in our opinion, and I believe that with the way we have the sewer line laid out, that it will result in a minimal amount of disturbance within the 100-foot review area. So with that, if the commission has any questions, we'll certainly try to answer them.
Bob, the pipe you're going to be using is going to be Schedule 35, or what?
No, it should be Schedule 40. It's 8-inch PVC.
It's tested, pressurized?
Oh yeah, as part of the, because this is going to go through right now. Just so you understand, it's going through both WPCA's, both in the for the town of Orange and for the city of Derby. It's already basically gotten the approval and sign off from both commissions. McCafferty, I believe, is also doing review work on the plans on the behalf of on behalf of the town of Orange. But the sewer lines, my understanding is that when they go in, they're going to have the normal testing done on the lines, which will consist of pressurized air testing after they're installed. And that's basically just to ensure the water tightness on the pipe.
Bob, why is this coming in now without a full site plan for what's going to be, for the reason why this is brought in?
Well, because in the context of things with where we are, again, what we needed to do is basically start at ground zero and get through WPPCA, because if an agreement couldn't be reached with regards to the sanitary sewers, and basically there is no project. So we're taking it one step at a time. The WPCA and getting the approval there was step number one. The next step is where we're at right now, which is what I would consider to be step two, is to get the approval from the local agencies, both being the town of Orange and the city of Derby, to allow us to extend or to install that, what I'm going to refer to as the off-site cross-country sanitary sewers through the Hine property.
But the plan for the development isn't prepared yet.
It's we're probably about 70% done with it. So we would envision that if this, with those plans, provided that we get the approval on the sewer line extension, those plans will be forthcoming in a short period of time.
I'm just curious, what would happen if you did this extension and you came in and you couldn't get approvals for the plan?
Well, without approvals of the plan, I don't think the sanitary sewer line makes any sense, because there's considerable monetary values that are tied in with the sewer line. The applicant is putting a tremendous amount of money into the city of Derby for allowing the extension of the sewer line and basically doing some upgrades to their treatment plant and their mains, and they're going to be helping Derby with their what's referred to as the I, which is the infiltration and inflow within the lines.
Okay, this wouldn't be put in until there's an approval of the site plan.
Right, there would have to be, approval in some shape or form for the use of the property that's controlled by Sunrise Hill Estates. What we're in for tonight is not under the control of Sunrise Hill. It's basically the Hine property.
Where's this sewer end up, onto Baldwin?
Okay, you're referring to the colored up map?
Yeah. I see it stops there.
Yeah, this is basically, at the end of this line is where the existing line is. This kind of comes down, it's cross-country, it comes across here and stays within Derby. I believe it ends up back over on Krakow, back in through that area. But no portion of that sewer line comes into the town of Derby right now with the existing one. So that's all off-site and located within the city of Derby.
So there's no existing sewer lines on Derby Ave?
That's not in that proximity, no.
There's nothing right here?
No.
So Adams is picked up from the
There-
back?
Yeah, I believe those sewer lines are all picked up.
Or just to have a sewer line on private property? I mean, once you follow Route 34 or Sodom Lane?
No, again, these were all discussions that came up with WPCA, and what they're like one of the things that they're actually looking at in conjunction with this project is to try to limit the ability for future ties to this. The sewer line that's being proposed basically for this project and this project only.
Because I thought they were developing the whole back area there in Derby.
Yeah, I believe that there's an application pending on that.
Yeah.
Right.
It's supposed to be a big project back there.
Yeah, there's, off the top of my head, I don't know the particulars of it. I know when we were up in Derby last month, there were some drawings that were hung up on the board up there for that piece.
Okay.
Oh, that's the Lowe's project?
No, not the
No.
Lowe's project. There's another industrial, it's an industrial, I think it was a 5-lot industrial development.
Your sewer line going into this new development, it's going to be going into the backyards of people? Because unless you're changing the road, isn't the road coming off of Grassy Hill Road to come into this development?
It's an entirely new layout.
Oh, it's going to be,
Right.
oh, okay.
You can't go by what we saw for the housing.
I think that sewer line is in all the way back into Ciccarelli's property there. That line is all in already. It goes, almost reaches the Baldwin Road.
No, well, there is an active sewer main, because the line that we're tying into is, I believe it's 10-inch clay pipe. I mean, that's actually a trunk, what's considered to be a trunk line. It's already picking up a considerable amount of flow through portions of Derby. As you get down a little bit lower, it changes over to a 12-inch line. So that's not, it's not a small line by any means. But again, that's the existing line that's located within the city of Derby.
Just have a note here from a department head sign-off sheet. I don't know if you saw this. From Mr. Schumacher. It says, if the town engineer is not going to review the plans, is any engineer from the town going to review them?
Yeah, and the answer to that is yes. Metcalf and Eddie is going to be reviewing the
That's gonna be
drawings on
the-
behalf of the WPCA.
Okay. And then it also says, is 8-inch sewer pipe appropriate? Or should a smaller diameter pipe be utilized? Can't read the rest of the writing. Yeah. Sources cannot be discharged into the system. That's it.
I can speak to that. One of my other hats is I am staff to the WCA. There was a meeting last Thursday. An agreement was reached with one of the agents of Sunrise Hill Estates LLC, I think it is, for lack of a better
Right.
term, for the WPCA to hire their own independent engineering firm. In this particular case, it is going to be Metcalf and Eddie to review all the plans for this entire proposal, and also to help with putting an agreement together with Derby between the Orange WPCA and the Derby Water Pollution Control Authority. That is moving forward, and I Also to understand that I don't believe a shovel is going to go into ground until everyone is satisfied that this is the appropriate way to go, and again, a considerable amount of funds get transferred. So for Diana's question, like I said, best of my knowledge, there's nothing going in probably for months yet.
Well, I would think first we're gonna need, what the engineer's report to be on. Because you don't have the report yet, correct?
That hasn't even started.
Right.
Like I said, the agreement was just signed last,
Okay.
in fact, it was probably finalized yesterday, the preliminary agreement. But as far as sewer line goes, I mean, I think the closest point to our wetland is 80 feet.
Right.
So I need,
I think all told, there's about, it's about 10 lineal feet is what's within the review area.
Do you think there's a potential for impact?
Well, I mean, they're testing the line. I mean, Schedule 40, I mean, you could increase that area to Schedule 80 just for safety. I mean, I don't know if it matters, you know?
And again, from an engineering perspective,
It could be
there's-
tested
Yeah, I mean,
before-
there's no loads over it.
Right.
That would really dictate going up to Schedule 80. You know, with the way that the line should be installed, everything should be watertight with respect to the manholes and the actual sewer line itself. Those tests are all typically conducted with an outside testing company upon installation of the line, and normally before they allow any flow to go into the line, those tests need to be conducted and signed off on.
And there's nothing on Baldwin Road for sewer?
No, that's really the closest point to get back into that area.
I just, you know, if you went up Baldwin into the property, it's just a better way to do it because,
There's nothing over on Baldwin.
Oh, I
Everything is.
oh, I know, but it's the same distance.
because you got a lot more wetland to get through to get over to Baldwin Road. I
Oh,
can tell
this
you
way?
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
where that
All right.
reserve.
Yeah, I don't know what's in there.
So what? You can see it here.
Yeah.
Who's responsible for maintaining this? You know, what would happen if it wasn't inspected, wasn't maintained, and it leaked? Who has that responsibility?
Well, ultimately, the responsibility is going to be the town of Orange and the city of Derby for that portion of the line that's within respective community.
Will the town of Orange be inspecting it, or will Derby be inspecting it?
Both.
Orange will inspect their part, Derby will inspect their respective part.
Quite frankly, I believe Derby's agreement right now is that they are going to inspect the whole thing, but that's typically what they would do when it doesn't cross municipal boundaries. So I think that is something that still needs to be worked out. at this
Yeah,
moment.
and I think what we're looking at are some of the same concerns that are being raised here tonight. Derby is going to want the assurances that the parts of the sewer line that are actually controlled in Orange have been installed in accordance with good engineering practice, and that basically there's not going to be any infiltration or inflow into the system. I mean, that's part of, you know, the extra monies that Sunrise Hill Estates is putting aside is trying to get rid of that, is trying to get rid of the water that's getting into the system right now. Which during heavy storm events they have a problem on that sewer line, leading down to the treatment plant where there's a lot of groundwater and illegal roof drain connections and things along those lines that get into the sewer line, and it tends to overtax the sewage treatment plant. So the approach that Derby is actually looking at is that with the installation of this line, it's going to be a benefit to the environment in being able to cut down on those overflows from the sewage treatment plant and cutting down on the infiltration and inflow to it. So overall, the installation of this line will be a benefit to the surrounding environment.
But they're not replacing a line, they're just installing a new one from the catch basin all the way up, correct?
Our part is going to be the part that we're showing and what's been submitted with this application. That's a brand new line that's tying into an existing.
Right, so whatever's leaking their system now is still going to be leaking.
No, because what's going to happen is part of the monies that are being set aside, which is in essence going to be a whole separate study.
They're gonna fix it.
They're going to, well, they're not going to fix everything.
Right.
But what they're going to do is they're going to figure out where the most judicious locations are to get the most bang for the buck, if you would.
Right, because right now their clay pipe is probably cracked or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've seen in another town where lack of maintenance can cause some real severe problems. So that's my main concern is that this is maintained, inspected, and, repaired when necessary.
Was it about 5 feet of cover?
No, it varies, as you get down towards with where we're tying into the line. I think that's down, close to 12 feet. We did try to shallow it up, in the area of the, driveway going through the Hines, and I think there are some areas in there that we've got about 6 feet of cover. And then it gets, deep, as we get back down over towards, the Route 34 crossing again.
I believe there's going to be a condominium association where money is going to be set aside to take care of maintenance inspection based on the agreements that have been talked about, or the conversations that have been back and forth. I think that will be part of a final agreement also.
Why wouldn't WPCA, wouldn't they be taking over the line once you're done?
Partly.
Oh, is this a private line?
That's the way, I believe that's the documents are being set up, but be that as it may, ultimately, the town is the one that's responsible for the sewer lines. And of course, with the DEP permits, it's just like anything else comes in with private sewage treatment plant. While you may have an association that's responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of that, ultimately, if the owner doesn't maintain it, the town has the right to come in, do the maintenance, and then back charge or assess the individual or associations the case may be, which is really not, you know, a whole lot different than the way that this commission works with their detention basin agreements today. You know, just by way of example, for Sunrise Hill Estates, we have a detention basin that's approved in there, with the understanding that the homeowners association is going to be responsible for the operations, maintenance, and upkeep of that facility. But it's also part of the permit process and the approval on that application that should the association not do that, the town has the right to come in, do the necessary maintenance or upkeep, and then to charge back those, or to charge back to the association or owners, the case may be.
If I recall, there was a few houses up on top, I forgot, maybe 6 or 7, that I thought they said they were gonna put sewers to those homes.
Right, there's 8 houses, or approximately 8 houses on that upper end that will not be set up or tied in with the sanitary sewer. Those will be
Septic?
Those will have septic system designs, yeah. There's one presently under construction now. It's up on top of the hill.
The original goal to carry that was to have those 8 homes on sanitary sewer. However, it actually, under the Connecticut, or the state of Connecticut, I think it's plan of conservation, but it's a non-sewer district halfway or a quarter way of that property. It happens to break off at the hillside. For
Yeah, which is basically, I believe it's the watershed divide, which as it comes down through there, yeah.
So they have to be on septic by state date.
Anybody else? Was it possible to get some rough sketch where this sewer line goes into your development to see if it's in the road, or is it in a... No.
Well, once it comes back into the property, it's going to be tied into the roadway system that we have for the development.
That'll be in the roadway system?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a little bit of it that goes cross-country, which right now we're looking at, that's going to go down to the community building. So there is a small portion that will be located outside of the road.
Anything else? Just wait for the report then, before we vote on this?
Well, the report is going to go to the WPCA of Orange. So it's something that I don't anticipate them seeing for several months. This is just part of the steps that are required for this project to continue to go forward before they even get to the point of, in other words, if this commission decides they're not going to act on this, then that's going to put the brakes on everything. We won't be able to go forward.
I mean, it's hard to believe WPCA approve a 800 line in a private piece of property, you know?
Well, I can tell you that they're all over town.
Yeah. Right.
We've got from Indian River, right across, right adjacent to the Christmas tree shop, that goes up in roundabout way, but ultimately it goes western between Stu Leonard's and Finley Fine Jewelers, all the way down the hill on Gravity, and shoots underneath 95 and goes underneath Bear parking lot and crosses the Oyster River and eventually goes into Milford. So it's all private property with the exception of 95.
And there's an association?
No, it's just part of a municipal sewer system, and they obviously had to get construction easements, et cetera, during the course of construction back in the late 80s, but we have lines all over the place, not private lines, but they're
Right, but
private
does
property.
WPCA maintain it, or do you who maintains that?
WPCA.
WPCA.
But they won't be maintaining this. This will be association.
Ultimately, again,
Right.
as Mr. Uwe says, if there's a problem, the WPCA is going to get called, just like the
Right,
Christmas tree shop
right.
has their own private pump station.
Right.
But when that fails, we're usually the first responders.
That's after it fails. What about inspections? Are there inspections that should be done on a regular basis that the association's going to be responsible for, and do we have any control over knowing that's going to happen?
Well, that's something I think that WPCA needs to get into their agreement with Sunrise Hill Estates, LLC. And I know that I shouldn't say I know, but I'm reasonably confident that all these very same questions have been occurring at the WPCA meetings, and they have the same concerns also, and they're trying to make sure that those safeguards are in place. I can tell you that the town of Orange sewers on Route 1 in particular, every year, the manholes get pulled and the covers get pulled, the manholes get inspected, and we generally have a jet rod truck go flush those lines all out every year to get rid of anything that may have gotten in, any grease that may have built up, et cetera, to make sure that all the waterways are still intact and they haven't fallen apart. So yeah, it's a fairly massive undertaking for Route 1. This is one single 8-inch line plastic pipe that, quite frankly, will probably outlast all of us sitting here without any problem. The only thing that you need to do is just make sure that some of the manhole covers that are in remote areas are locked, so that there is no fear of anybody pulling them, falling them, and getting hurt. And we have an awful lot of those in town also that go through the remote areas. It's really, if you don't know anything about it, it's an amazing system, quite honestly.
I think we might approve it with conditions, you know.
I would think one of the conditions would be after we see the findings. I mean, they could be increasing the pipe and moving the line, right? The engineers.
Yeah, I don't, as far as moving the line, I don't foresee that happening. I know there's been some discussion on the size of the pipe. If anything, the size of the pipe will likely go down, not up. Because again, what one of the goals of WPCA is to really try to limit the capacity of this line, so that so it'll basically limit the capacity and not allow adjacent properties or future tie-ins to it. And one way they could do that is by reducing the pipe size, although, you know, typically that's not going to follow good engineering practice. You know, typically the 8 inches is the smallest line that's typically acceptable on a main line.
But WPCA makes that choice?
Well, again, that's going to be something that they're reviewing with WPCA and Metcalf and Eddy, and I think, you know, from the wetlands perspective, I really don't see what difference an 8-inch versus a 6-inch or versus a 10 or 12-inch would really make with regards to what this application is about.
Well, it's just for future tie-ins, because if this gets developed, the line will be already there.
Correct.
Well, that's the whole idea of what everybody's trying to say is that, like Bob's saying, it might be reduced if they can show that the flows won't ever reach that, and that is, the whole idea is that so that there will not be future tie-in.
He also said that may not be good engineering practice.
Right. I mean, it's not.
I'm not going to disagree with that.
Right.
Well, as many safeguards as possible. WPCA, like I said, has agonized over this. They've had more special meetings in the last 6 months, and they've had regular meetings, I think, in the last 10 years. So there's been a lot to this.
So, from us, they just need the approval to go ahead. Is that what that is?
Basically.
Because we really don't have a defined finished product plan
Well,
yet.
right, but what you have to bear in mind, this application is not for Sunrise Hill Estates. This
Right.
application is basically for the installation of 800 feet of sewer line
Right.
across a private piece of property that's owned by the Hines. That's all this application is for.
Just crossing Route 34 and stopping there.
Exactly.
Right.
That's what this application is. So, you know, to sum it up in a nutshell, what we're asking this commission for is for permission to install 100 feet of sewer line within your regulated review area, and that's it.
Right.
If this were 4 or 5 months ago, they wouldn't even be here.
Right, because it's
Because of
would've
the
been less
review
than
area.
100.
Right.
Does anybody care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the application.
Any conditions?
I don't know what conditions we can put on it. I mean,
Right.
not, I'll leave it up to you guys.
I'll second it, and then we can discuss condition.
Okay.
I would like to have, we don't have information we need, such as who's responsible for the maintenance. That's not tied down. I'd like to have that submitted. The maintenance agreement, that this would be subject to our approval of that. And also, you wanted to see the engineering report. And I don't see why we couldn't ask for that to be submitted.
I would assume that once they have the report, they'll probably have their design set for your...
Yeah, and again, I mean, the approach that I would probably take on it, again, if you want to make that a condition of prior to issuance of the permit, that's fine. And again, if there are significant enough changes to the drawing, we're going to be back before this commission. Like, in other words, if the engineering report comes back and tells us, no, we want to run it right through the middle of the wetlands, then guess what? We're coming back before you.
Once it's approved by the PCA, they're going to want a maintenance agreement too. So
Right.
it's not going to, we'll see it then, not.
Yeah, but we might want to comment on it, too.
Right. Okay. Anything else? A motion, second. All in favor? Aye. You're all set.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, let me, did
Just a copy of the soil scientist report with Warrenburg.
Where's that from? Okay. Old business. Brunswick Holdings, South Orange Center Road.
I need to recuse myself from this. Okay.
Oh. Mike Robertshaw excused himself. Can't do it.
Well, we can't vote, that's all.
Well, I mean, it's up to the other. We're not going to have enough. I mean, do you want to just? We can't vote.
If you're going to vote tonight, we just lost our quorum.
We can proceed. We would proceed because Eric is here with some of the information. I assume it would be on record and they can read the record.
Well, at least if we have any questions or anything, at least it's all you'll know tonight.
So we'll be continued to
Right.
the next meeting.
But if there's anything else, at least you know tonight. You know to.
Sure.
Right. Okay.
And we are to submit some new information tonight anyway.
Okay.
So,
That'd be fine.
So, for the record, my name is Tom Daly. I'm a professional engineer with the firm Ilona McBroom. If we recall, we were before you, and I've actually lost track. It's been a while. I think it was back in March, February, something like that. And, excuse me.
March 15th. Yeah.
So ultimately, we were before this commission. We presented the application to you, and the commission made several comments to us. And one of the things we had not submitted, even though we had noted on our record, was our environmental or the wetland assessment report. And one of the reasons we did have a delay was obviously we got hit with a late snowstorm, and the weather had not been that cooperative to us. But the weather did turn, and Eric is here with us tonight from Michael Klein's office, here to present his findings in his report. What I would like to do is just very briefly go through just some quick revisions that the commission asked me to consider. One, they had asked for the dumpster pad here to have a curb, so it would act as a containment area. So that was revised. We had submitted on March 15th a letter to Scott and revised plans that these elements were addressed. So that was one of the comments we had picked up. Second of all is a detail of the retaining wall was put on the plans. A modular block wall, standard detail. In addition to that, the commission requested that we show the outfall or the under drain system on that, and we tie that into the sediment chambers. In addition to that, the commission asked us if there was an opportunity to investigate the opportunity of moving the sediment chamber out of the pavement area so we wouldn't have that settlement, that it would just, trying to adjust the frames would be difficult, so that slid over into the grass area. In addition to that, we also conducted test pits on March 30th. We conducted 4 test pits in the area of the underground retention. As you recall, we are abiding, while this application was submitted under your previous regulations, we did go forward and design this in accordance with your new regulations, which I know says the commission may require. But the underground infiltration area is designed to retain any increases in flow all the way up to the 100-year storm. And I know that was one of the comments that I think Schumacher indicated. But so we calculated the runoff for the site from existing conditions, calculated the runoff site under proposed conditions, and basically stored on site that change in runoff all the way up to the 100-year storm. But in addition to that, we did test pits. We did test pits in the 4 corners of it. We found basically about 4 inches of topsoil, and then down to about 4 feet we did light brown, medium fines, sand and stone. So it was was material that was well suited for infiltration. In addition to that, the elevation of the groundwater was, I would say, trying to read the topo, is about elevation 40 in this area, so somewhere around 39.5, 40. We also revised in this plan, we went to a shallower infiltration galley system. I think before we had something in the range of 30 to 36-inch galleys. We're now at 28-inch galleys, so we have provided a 1-foot vertical separation between the bottom of the galley system and the groundwater. And obviously on March, we basically probably hit the one of the peaks of groundwater. So those revisions have been submitted. The test pit data is on the plans, and it's my recollection those were the comments made by this commission. So at this point, Eric is here to present his findings in terms of the wetland issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Eric Davis, and I'm a soil scientist and wildlife biologist with Environmental Planning Services. Our offices are in West Hartford. Michael Klein was supposed to be here tonight. He had a family emergency, so I'm filling in for him. The only reason I mention that is because the report is fairly new to me. I have been to the site and I'm familiar with the site, but you just have to bear with me if you see me staring at the report and reading from it to go through the site features. I'm pretty sure that some of you or all of you are familiar with the site, but I'll just briefly go through the wetland characteristics as I saw them. I have been to, I was on the property last week, but do you want to put that up there? But also several years ago I spent a week or two doing some wildlife surveys on lower parcel. Oh, excellent. Thank you. Really helpful for you. As I was saying, I visited a small parcel last week, but I have been on this lower parcel that I'm not sure what happened with that application, but did some wildlife surveys out there 3 or 4 years ago. This aerial photo is interesting as it sort of can point out the variability that I saw in this wetland. The wetland in question is obviously this one close to the Route 1 and South Lawrence Road. You can see this area here, you can see an open canopy area. The entire wetland's a shrub swamp, and you can really see that. It's well defined here where there's an open canopy. But the northern part of the wetland, which is sort of hidden by the tree canopy, you see some of these black areas here, the open water areas. That's the area of the wetland that you delineated on the plans. So that's the northern area of the wetland. And the reason for that variation is that there's some historic disturbance and also some, I guess you would call it, ongoing disturbance that's occurring in that wetland as a result of some water outfall that's, if you look at the plans, that wetland flag 139, there's a large stormwater outfall there. And what that is doing is causing some scouring and sediment deposits and also some floatables, some trash deposits in the upper part of this wetland. And the vegetation's been smothered as a result of that stormwater discharge, and you can see based on deposits of what we call rack, which is basically floating plant debris and sticks, you can see rack deposits throughout the edges of the wetland, out in this area on the edges of this ponded area that's here. And that sort of tells you that the wetland has splashy nature as a result of that large outfall. When you get a heavy storm and the outfall is flowing heavily, the water comes up, deposits that debris, and the water comes back down. So I think it has a much more variable water level in this northern part. And let me just show you that. If you look to the second to the last page, there's a few photos. And I apologize, they're in black and white, but I think you'll see what I mean here. If you look at photo 3, it's on page 7. In the background of photo 3, can you see that earthen berm there? There's a sort of a high spot at the edge of that ponded area. And that's really is an old earthen berm, and that's what separates this northern area of the wetland. And that earthen berm runs basically right here, across the wetland right here, east to west, and that's what you see in the background of that photo 3. And that ponds the water to the north and sort of holds all the water and debris from that stormwater outfall. Beyond that berm is what you see on the photo that I pointed out as that open shrub swamp. That portion of the wetland is I considered an undisturbed wetland as opposed to this northern area. You also see quite a bit of disturbance around the eastern side of the wetland.
Can you show where the berm is on that?
The berm is, it's hidden by trees, but if you see, runs about as my finger's running there. And it's, on your plans, it sort of starts at about wetland flag 132 and runs west. It's an old berm, and you can tell that by the trees that are growing in it. So when I said earlier there's historic disturbance, that's really what, it looks like there was some old excavating and filling all around the wetlands, in the wetlands, to create that berm. Obviously associated with this development, there's been some filling right against the wetlands here. There's a ditch here that was an old ditch that was created, and there's all sorts of fill piles and disturbance in this area. So essentially, what you see is a disturbed both wetland and wetland upland interface, with the center of the wetland area is relatively undisturbed and still what you would find is native vegetation, undisturbed soils, and in a more natural condition. If you look at photo 4, that'll show you that northern boundary of the wetland. Photo 4 is right here, looking at that fill slope adjacent to this development. And if you look at, and I'll just go through the photos quickly, photo 1 shows the area that's proposed for development. And again, you can see that sort of odd hill there, right-hand side of the photo, photo 1. Again, that looks to me like, from what I saw out in the field, an old fill pile. So you can see that the upland portions of the site have also been disturbed. And look, it's historic disturbance. Photo 2, earlier I described that stormwater outfall has deposited sediment and created some scouring. And if you look at photo 2, you can see that. You can see some garbage and some debris that's been deposited. And you see that loose sediment that's on the top of the wetland there. That's sort of a sediment delta that's formed at the end of that outfall. And as I said, this is all occurring north of the berm. The berm sort of divides that disturbed area from this undisturbed portion. So that's sort of the description of the wetlands as I saw it in the field. One wetland system essentially, but two different wetland types, if you will. One that's been altered and is somewhat graded, and one that's in a natural condition. We did a brief review of functions and values of this wetland, and when we evaluated the functions and values of the wetland, we consider the whole wetland, not just wetland in parts. So this is an evaluation of the entire wetland system. And the primary functions and values of the wetland were stormwater recharge, the underlying material, sufficient material, sand and gravel, so that allows for good rechargeability. Floodwater storage, this is obviously a large wetland, is able to hold a lot of water, store a lot of floodwater. It also has very deep organic soils, so those soils can absorb a lot of water. So after a flood, this wetland can store water and prevent downstream flooding. It also has very dense vegetation, and along with that dense vegetation, if you have dense vegetation as well as organic soils, you usually get good sediment retention and nutrient attenuation, function of this wetland. We looked at the wildlife habitat value of the wetland. This is one of those, from my perspective as a biologist, sort of a classic case where you could pick this wetland up and put it into an undeveloped landscape and probably have great wildlife diversity, and probably did prior to the development of Route 1. But once you lose the upland habitat, or the upland habitat becomes altered as the grading and filling that's occurred on some of the upland habitat and the encroachment of development, the wildlife value becomes somewhat limited. There was a fairly strong course of spring peepers in that wetland, which is a small tree frog. They're one of the species that does fairly well in narrow upland habitats along wetlands. The other species you're probably familiar with, wood frogs and some of the salamanders, usually need a larger undeveloped envelope around the wetland. You'll see on page 3 we describe wetland impacts. From our perspective, obviously, first and foremost is that this development has no direct impacts proposed. Regardless of whether we think that there's been some degradation of the wetland, we obviously wouldn't use that as a reason to say it's okay to continue to degrade the wetland. So the fact that there are no direct impacts to the wetland allows the wetland to continue to function as it is now post-development. So we don't expect that the proposed development will impact the functions and values of the wetlands as they stand currently. About direct impacts, obviously we look at the potential for indirect impacts. First and foremost is obviously erosion into the wetland. So we always make sure that the site plans are designed in accordance with DEP's current erosion sediment control manual, which is a 2002 manual, and according to the site plans, the erosion control plans are in accordance with that design manual. Another thing that's worth pointing out is that one of the things I do on a weekly basis for probably the past 4 years is inspections of construction sites, usually after something bad has happened so that the town requires it. So they're usually problem sites. And one thing that I've learned that is soil type is obviously an important factor, slope, but also the size of the area that's going to be cleared. This is less than an acre of clearing. The soils are not fine textured, they're loamy soils, but they're not silty soil, and the slopes are not excessive, so I would not expect that you would need any erosion control measures outside of the typical measures that are proposed in the plans. Another indirect impact that we look at, obviously, is the impacts of stormwater on water quality and water quantity, and obviously we see that there has been some impacts. We can speculate that the water quality has been slightly impacted by this large discharge, probably is the case. Also that, as I mentioned, you see that there's some flashiness to that wetland, so there's been some impacts as far as water quantity. And so the proposed infiltration system will actually mimic what's already occurring at the site, collecting the water, allowing it to infiltrate back into the ground through that superficial sand and gravel and back into the groundwater. One thing that I should point out is that one positive thing about the fact that this discharge is affecting the wetland is that the wetland is actually functioning as a detention basin in some sense, so that it is improving water quality and sort of protecting downstream water quality, if you will. And I think it might connect to Indian Lake, at least, obviously that does degrade that wetland system, but it does serve to protect downstream water quality. Not that you would want to use wetlands as stormwater retention basins, but obviously they do function to improve water quality and protect downstream areas. I think that was about it.
Quick question.
Sure.
How you said the water pools.
Yeah, that's
Photo number 3.
photo 3 and 4 are both that pooled
Okay, but does
area.
that number 3 overfill and cascade over the berm, or?
That's a question. Yeah, there is not. It doesn't show in the photo, but if you were out there taking this photo that I took, just off to the right of that large tree, there's a low spot berm where that water does connect. So there is a break in the berm,
Okay.
and it flows into this open shrub area.
Right, it doesn't sit there, it moves.
It does. It
Right.
does flow. It does flow into the net. It depends for. It's a constricted outlet. It doesn't. It takes time to flow out. I think one other thing I should mention is that, from our perspective, and obviously statewide, everyone, wetland commissions realize the issue of sprawl and impacts to natural landscapes. From that perspective, I think for me, this is one of the sites that you sort of, as long as there aren't direct impacts proposed and all best management practices are in place, it's really an appropriate site for development. You've got development around, you've got the infrastructure, rather than having someone go out into a farm or a wooded lot and say, here's where we're going to put this new commercial development. So from our perspective, that's something we think is positive.
Can you go back to the plan?
Sure.
I don't know if you can answer this question.
I'll try.
You talked about a rack line. Does that stay entirely in the wetland, or does it move into the, for example, between wetland flag number 133 and 135? Do you ever see the rack moved up above that, or does it pretty much stay in the wetland?
No, I didn't see the rack outside of the wetland, and I didn't see any ponding outside of the. I'm not sure if we flagged the wetlands or if someone else did. I think, yeah. Yeah, and I didn't obviously didn't review the wetland line, but I didn't see, there was no areas where I walked out, and sometimes I do because I do the same work, look to see, hey, there's water beyond this wetland flag, or there's evidence of ponding beyond this wetland flag. I did not see that. The rack and the ponded water was contained within the flagged area.
Yeah, you probably know why I was asking that, because it's like it might be a floodplain up in here, and according to the contours.
Oh, I see.
Right in here.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because, and that's really what, that area exactly where you just pointed, flags 132 up to 135, that angle area, that's what you see in photo 2. And that's, I would call it a floodplain, but that's where that sediment, that delta forms. This outfall comes down, you have high velocities here, but as the velocities decrease here, you have, this spreads out. And there's like I said, a sediment delta that forms here. So this is where the velocities decrease, and all that sediment, that garbage is sort of just sitting right there. So it does form into that area, and it flows this way and that way.
Any other questions?
I had a question relating to the first gentleman's presentation. But from a dumpster area, we'd like to see a curbing, which you provided that. Is that out of asphalt or out of concrete?
It is out of, let me see. We actually provided a detail sheet. It's out of asphalt. It's a concrete, it's basically embedded in the overall parking.
So we, as a
but it's also, there's a fence on top of it, so it's not like it can get knocked out. There's a fence enclosure with curbing. The plow won't have an ability, I'm assuming you're going to the point of maintenance where the plow just knocks it out.
The dumpster truck actually pushing the dumpster against the back of it, defeating the purpose of us requesting.
Yeah, and I think we would have no objection to, I think did we talk about that?
Yeah,
we did talk about that. There's plus and minuses.
I remember saying concrete.
And that might have been my oversight. I'd be more than happy to revise the plan to go
They
concrete.
could drill the fence into the concrete.
We could do that.
curbing.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Right.
We would have no objection to that.
Something for the dumpster to be pushed against.
Sure, some strength. Sure, that makes sense.
Usually, I don't know, I didn't see the new plans, but you should put 2-inch bollards there. So the dumpster's bollards instead of the curb. You understand? Okay.
We can do that. No problem with that.
Also, because I was looking at your soils here, 48 inches, which is going to be your footing depth, light brown, medium, it's got topsoil. Are you going to have somebody test the soil to get your whatever you need, 2,000, 3,000 psi for bearing capacity?
I'm sure whatever the building official would require us to. I'm not a geotechnical engineer, but if that's required by the I assume when we built this building, we would go out there with official borings. I mean, we'd probably have a geotechnical engineer design the borings, and I'm sure the building official would require those calculations.
Well, I just would make sure you do have something,
Yeah.
even if they don't require it, because could sink.
Nobody wants that. Just two other comments for you. While it's a little bit of a side, is Paul Denise from your zoning office did contact Mr. Fisk and asked him to actually go out there and clean all the debris, even though it wasn't from our site. I mean, we obviously have no use, but Mr. Fisk did go out there, and I think he pulled out some significant amount of debris that had occurred on site and took it down to the transfer station. So, the site has been cleaned up even just by this pure, minimal application. Here, Eric's comments tonight, in terms of, clearly, if you go out there, all observations that Eric saw are the same things I've seen. This is a large diameter pipe. I think it's, in the range of 36-inch, carrying basically a huge amount of flow. If the commission so desires, there could be an opportunity to provide some riprap check dams and probably an appropriate scour protection here. I mean, it'd have to need big riprap. It would require activity in the wetland itself, but if the commission so believes there's some opportunities for actually enhancement of the wetland by providing sediment containment in these areas, we would be willing to work with the commission on those type of improvements, even though we're not going there and it's really all coming right off of Route 1. While we are in there, there may be some opportunities to do that. At this point, I did not see any. Was there any riprap protection, or if it was, it's long been filled by sediment?
Not formally, no.
Yeah. So there may be some opportunities there.
If that were done, would it be something that could then be cleaned out periodically to catch that sediment? Because this is eventually going to, keep filling and filling with this sand, from the road. I'm assuming most of it's road sand.
Yeah. It's road sand and a lot of foam cups and such coming off a run. I think the goal would be, at least right now, there's nothing. I mean, it looks like with the berm here, you probably get a lot of 2 inches over a very large area, which is very difficult to clean up. If we created a scour hole or a depression with a thing, I'd rather clean 1 foot out of a small area than 1 inch over a large area. Now, ultimately, who's responsible? It's probably the DOT. We could probably work with the DOT and provide. The grade is relatively flat, so yes, it could get in there and be maintained on a regular basis, as opposed to now it probably never gets maintained at all. But yes, it would be accessible from the tail end of this parking lot. The grade is relatively flat into that area. We'd obviously work with Eric and Michael to try to find out, where the best containment area is here. But right now, probably if it overtops the berm, the cement just keeps going. There's no containment whatsoever. The berm probably serves its purpose to some extent, but I think we could improve upon that.
I certainly would be in favor of that, knowing the way it is up there. The only concern that I have, and this is from experience with the recreation showroom, is that they did put in a large plunge pool with a riprap forebay, and it's become very difficult to clean because the road sand has a tendency to act almost like a cementitious material, and it gets right in there, and now the water just, unless it's cleaned 2 or 3 times a year, the water just shoots right over the top rather than pass through it. So I'm wondering if there's a different methodology that can be used, but clearly I think it's a great effort on the applicant's part to offer that, and I don't feel that there's going to be much really no impact to the wetland out there. It's only going to be an enhancement, but I think they need to look at another way to possibly do that, because like I said, we've tried it in other areas, and it just Christmas Tree Shop has a leak off also that's the same way, and ultimately they need to be ripped out with a machine and redone.
I mean, it's not a perfect scenario. I guess it's more especially on the large parking lots, and especially on Route 1, they probably sand it quite well. But at least you have an opportunity to rip it out, as opposed to trying to get this sediment filling in to such a large area. We would hope to think we could provide some way, and maybe work with Scott to find out if we can talk internal to our office and work with Scott and see if we can find a way that it can be maintained. But it's just not a perfect situation. But at least it should be a significant improvement as to what's out there. And also, we should be able to slow the velocity down with stone here. And because I saw some velocity, it's really even picking up some of the natural soils and eroding those down through that area. But at least we can take the punch out of this velocity in here and let it kind of migrate its way through the wetlands naturally, as opposed to really for us the velocity that's occurring now, basically putting all that debris up in that area. So we can take a look at that in the field, and maybe it appears we're going to be continued anyways. Maybe Scott, you and I can make a field visit out there together. And come up with a scenario, a deal that works well.
I think that would be a good idea. One of the things I have noticed myself is that because of the grades, and you folks are doing a much better job at it with the split level parking area as opposed to the grades of the properties to north of you, but they've got substantial grade change to get out of these properties from the back of them out to Route 1. So there is a tremendous amount of sanding that's done, and
sure.
I see you even have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it's like 10 catch basins depicted on your plan.
Sure.
And I can tell you that a lot of those are just not really catch basins so much as they are holes punched out of the pipe to get rid of the ponded water that was back there. So there is a substantial amount of sand, and what's actually kind of running into my mind is that if there's some way that between Ravenswood, Mr. Fisk, Brunswick Holdings, there we go, make sure I have the right applicant here, that possibly work out something with the owners above you there that they might want to share in the cost of some type of sediment trap just prior to the discharge of that pipe. And then it kind of becomes, the onus goes back on the people that are creating the problem. I realize there's prescriptive rights for drainage, but certainly the degradation that is occurring here as a result of what I think is a serious amount of debris not only being dumped on your site by those property owners, but certainly by the amount of sand, salt, et cetera, that's coming into your property. Sometimes a knock on a door, or, just see if you guys can work together or something like that might go a lot farther than putting in some riprap and hoping we can get it cleaned out, as opposed to having a vac truck come in once a year or even if they shared it, something to that effect. So I throw that out also.
That's a good idea. So maybe 2 weeks, come back. You have something? Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, would you just double check, and maybe you already know this. Is there any storm where the water is going to be backing up into this area, 133 to 135? Or is that something that's like way above the 100-year storm? Or
Yeah, currently there's the floodplain goes around this portion of the pond, but it doesn't come up into this area here. And these two are interconnected by basically a ditch. It's a man-made ditch. So I think it's ditch cut between here and I think the cell storage. So my investigation is the ponding or the flooding back through here doesn't really occur. This is really a water kind of somewhat segregated to that. It's been my experience, and also if you recall, you've been out there, the topography really jumps up pretty quick. I mean, 'cause this is all old fill piles. So this topo here is at elevation 40, but it immediately jumps up to 42. We will take a closer look at it. I'm sure after last week's rain, if there's any evidence of leaf being pushed outside on that, we'll be able to know that. These wetlands were flagged quite some time ago by Soil Science and Environmental Services, but I'm sure after last week's rain, we'll know if that area received any flooding.
Okay. But the flood number was 39.5 or 39, right?
On the lake, it was 39 and somewhere in the range of 39 and a half.
Right.
So you're looking at elevation 40 here.
Right.
however, this is a flashy area, so it could, a lot of the stormwater coming off the roads and all it could raise up pretty high there.
Yeah, it
before
may be.
gets over the berm.
I guess the difference is there's clearly localized flooding in this. I mean, it's the wetland, and this pipe really gets going on it. But ultimately, it's not flooding like a backwater condition coming up through there. And I think it's actually, I think the area serves quite well to really take that flashiness out of it. So by the time it does get down to, the more sensitive or the lake association, the flashiness is taken, really out of it because the berm, then it kind of mitigates through, it kind of migrates and then goes to the ditch. So I think as much as we may say, the area has been degraded and it's a sediment trap, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's acting as a sediment trap, but the lake is really serving as the greatest beneficiary of this wetland and the way it's functioning. But it clearly gets some flooding, localized flooding, but I don't believe it probably goes away pretty quickly. But we'll take a look at that too.
I was out there after that heavy rain, and that area you're talking about, I didn't see any evidence that it flooded beyond the flag line.
The flag's still out there?
So not all of them, but most of them.
Yeah, as I said, it was flagged quite some time ago, so I would be I'd be hard pressed to think that all the flags are there. Any
I
additional
have a question.
Oh, sure.
Not related. I noticed the wetland buffer plant list showing some shrubs that are native and would be great to put, as you note. What have you decided for trees? Are there certain trees that you'd be planting? My concern would be keeping the plant material non-invasive to the wetland area. As one tree that I would perhaps suggest not using would be Norway maple, Acer platanoides, maybe Acer rubrum, which is a red swamp maple. Might be a better choice if there were a choice to make.
We did provide a wetland plant list. I agree with you. We're very conscientious of using native type materials. It appears we don't specifically specify the trees that are along the perimeter. Norway maple is a tree we never specify. I have on my own property. They're a disaster. As I'm raking up in labor. But we can work with Eric and Michael and give you a stance on there. Thank you.
That's it? Okay. Let's see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Next for old business, 25 Briarwood Drive, modification of approval.
That would be me.
And Mike is back.
The approval letters that went out to the applicant specified that it was a two-bay garage. And if the commission recalls, it was originally, when it was, the original proposal had it, kind of being like almost perpendicular to the one. And then it was rotated in the other direction. When it was going to be perpendicular to the wetland, he was going to have two doors, 4 bays. Once he rotated it and he's going to face it in the other direction, he's still going to have 4 bays but 4 doors. So his actual permit and approval letter reads that it's going to be a 2-bay garage, when in essence it's not. And I just want to make sure that we can...
The size of the building didn't change.
The size of the building didn't change, just when we asked that it be rotated away from the wetland, the amount of doors that are going to be on it made more sense, because he's now working with the broad side rather than the gable end side. So, you know, it becomes a load-bearing, non-bearing wall. Well, that's one of the reasons why he was going to have 2 doors, because that was on a non-load-bearing wall. Now he's got to put all the headers in to do 4, but it makes more sense access-wide. So, in the event that someone looks at his approval letters and sees 2-bay garage and there's 4 doors on there, I think there is some ambiguity there. And
But if he had 2 doors, 16 foot each, it's the same as 4, right?
Well, I mean, that's your purview.
So we just need a motion to modify it to 4 doors versus 2 big doors? Or just,
Well, originally it was only going to be 2 8-foot doors, because again, we were working with the gable end,
Right.
which was a narrow end, 4 bays, but 2, and that's how the confusion came in. It actually became a 2-bay garage, when in essence it was a 2-door, 4-bay garage, and it's still going to be a 4-bay garage.
right.
So we can either, we don't care how many doors he puts in, but it'll be still a 4-bay door, so a 4-bay garage that way, with the way that the commission asked for it to be configured. But you folks made this motion, put all the conditions in there, it just,
We asked him to turn the building around. Right.
So that's the only reason I'm not going to handle this on, you know, just saying, yeah, no big deal, because I think it is something that you all need to collectively decide upon.
The access is toward the house, right? The 4 doors? Did this change? I missed the first meeting when the commission requested that it be moved, so I wasn't really aware of the access.
The access should be opposite his existing garage doors, correct?
Towards his driveway, not like a building or something. Or at
I
the
thought
end
it
of-
could be his 2 existing were there, and the new one's going to be in back of me.
So now he's got 4 coming out into that area. Is that what you're saying?
This was the original proposal for the existing, for the garage, but now it goes this way.
So he has existing doors here,
Right.
and the other 4 will be right here.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, facing each other.
I think, you know,
Because
just
we asked him to turn the building, whatever it was, 40 by 60, now the 60 part,
25 by 40.
or 25 by, the 40 part is facing this garage instead of the 25, right?
Correct.
That's what happened.
See, it was going to be, he was going to
Right.
shift it down, and you would just come in on the short side, but
Right.
now, because we rotated farther from the wetland, it just changes the access point. So I guess the question is, how do you want it to read? 4-bay garage, we don't care how many doors he has? I mean, because right now it's existing,
Right, we say 4 bay because if he only puts 2 doors there, they could be 2 16-foot garage doors. It's the same thing. I mean, it's his choice if he wants to put 4 garage doors or 2.
but nothing else has changed.
Right.
The wording, and the applicant actually,
So
you know, I first looked at it and I said, well, I remember hearing the part about all that, but we decided to
So-
deal with the
so we
violation,
just-
we better not do anything
So-
further.
So you want to just put 4 bay garage?
I think that it's my opinion that it should, the a motion should be made to modify this to be what it actually is. It's going to be a 4-bay garage regardless of how many doors there are.
Okay.
I'll move to modify that to make it correct with the 4 bays. 4 bays.
We have a motion. Anyone second? Drew second. Everyone in favor? Motion carries.
Thank you.
New business. Legal notice posting. Is that you?
That would be me again.
Okay.
And I know Charles should be here so he can empower me. Here's what's happening, folks. We as a commission, you as a commission, we as staff, put together a package a few years ago to raise our application fee up to $100 for residential construction, regardless of what it is. And of course, the state gets its $30 filing fee. We are mandated and required by state statute to post all of our decisions in the newspaper. Denials, approvals with conditions, name of applicant, address, etc., and a brief description of what be occurring. It costs us over $80 to post that notice. So it is, rather than raise the rate, I feel at this point, I read the regulations, I read statute. It says that the commission shall cause the notice to be posted in the newspaper. It doesn't say that the commission has to do it, but we shall cause it be done. And I'm proposing that within our regulations, and we have to go through all this again, but I think it's going to be well worth it going forward. We change our regs to read at some point along the way that the applicant post his own approval. And interestingly enough, there is a proviso in the statutes that says if the commission doesn't do it within the 10-day allotted time, I think they give us an extra 5 days, then the applicant can do it if he so desires to make sure that it gets in there.
What happens if the applicant's denied?
They still have to do it.
I think it'll be a little bit tougher if they're denied, right? I mean,
Well-
if you're approved, that's an easy condition for them.
Well, it'll be a condition. It's going to be part of the regulations.
All right.
The applicant shall, just like an application fee. Brunswick, Ravenswood Homes had an $1,100 application with us, and they were denied. But we didn't give them the application back.
Yeah, but who's going to be posting it? Are we get the $80 and post it for them, or they're going to do it?
They're going to do it. They just won't get their permit until they post it. That's the only leverage that we'll have.
Yeah, if approved.
Our $100 fee is for site plan application for new house? What?
It's for everything.
Well,
It's
maybe.
for the site plan review, it's for pre-submission meetings, it's for inspections, it's for mailings.
I don't think it in any way covers your time, especially for the large application. It certainly doesn't cover the notices, and if you figure what does a house in Orange go for, why would they not be willing to pay a higher fee to cover your time? Why should the taxpayers pay that?
I agree with you. But when you get someone that wants to have a deck,
You charge them less.
well, again, so that we have to restructure our fee schedule.
Yeah, but I think if you require that they do it, then that means that you're going to want to check and make sure they did it. And it's especially a problem if, there's an appeal coming and you don't know if or when it's going to be published, and, an attorney's calling you and saying, when is it going to be published so they can prepare their appeal? Well, what if the public doesn't publish it? I think it's going to get a little confusing, and I'd rather just charge them for it and you make sure it gets done.
Either way, the process is the same, but no argument for me. I have no problem with that. We just are underpaid.
I think the fee should be increased. The
I think
permit.
so.
I mean, that'd be the easiest way.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're approved, they'll be glad to go call the paper.
But then it gets, again,
You get
difficult.
appeals and the denies, you gotta have a problem.
That's great for subdivision, but again, when you get things that are, if you get a deck that's, especially now with our 100-foot review area, if you get a deck that's within 25 feet, as a matter of fact, this pool is wholly in the 40-foot, 39-foot, 25-foot review area. That's why I think it got pulled. They couldn't put everything together. So, we have to have a sliding scale.
I think so. I look at it differently if you've got a resident in Orange who wants to have an addition or a pool versus a developer who's coming in and developing, new properties. They can certainly afford to cover the time. The residents are already paying taxes. The developer's not paying any taxes.
No, again, no argument for me.
Well, maybe they're paying the property, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean. I think there's a difference there. if you want, I could give you my, I did in Branford estimates of my time for a new fee structure, which I could give to you. You can take a look at it and see.
Yeah, it's
You know,
crazy.
Because certainly we have to cover your expense. I mean, not all of it, but at least try to.
Well, this one became, very onerous in the past few months. That it was ludicrous. The state's getting more money than we are.
Yeah.
Okay, so am I to understand then that Commissioner Ross, you are going to put something together, or you have something together that you will forward to me, and then we can bring this up at our next meeting?
Yeah. I think it'd be good.
Thank you.
Number 6. Let's stay with Scott. You're on a roll. Enforcement officer report.
I have River on here only because I found it very, obviously the rain event that we had last week was, some areas of the state got a lot more water than what has been reported for New Haven. Actually got up something in the magnitude of 4 1/4 inches, something to that effect. But I found it interesting that the west side of town seemed to take the biggest beating. So somewhere north of Route 34 in Woodbridge, or a little bit above that, there must have been a lot more than 4 inches of rain, because the wet log did not make the corner in the conservation area on Mapledale and went straight to Surrey Drive. And it was quite a rather wide swath of, talk about rack, there was a lot of rack. And literally went right to Surrey Drive and kept on going. But I was just absolutely amazed at the difference between the east side of town and the west side of town. It was, so somewhere up there, somebody really got hammered hard. And I know Woodbridge and the Flats got completely wiped out. Yeah. So
I thought we had over 5 inches of rain.
I thought, quite honestly, based on what I went through on the internet, the morning of that Monday morning after the rain event, and then following 2 days, I kept looking, but I got to wait till a climatological data report comes out, because the numbers are all over the place. Fairfield County, supposedly between Bridgeport and Fairfield, recorded almost 7 inches of rain. Mamaroneck, New York, reported something like 9 inches of rain in not even 24 hours, or 7.5 inches of rain in less than 24 hours. So I mean,
There was big ranges in different towns.
Scattered all over the place. I'm not really sure exactly how much fell in this area, but if you take even 5 inches of rain, for sake of argument, we hear all the time about a 100-year storm event. 5 inches of rain, I believe, is only a 25-year storm event. So there's a whole heck of a lot more rain that can still come down. And I think, quite honestly, that for the most part, other than the Silver Brook taking out 8 feet of bank in front of Goddard School, and closing the base of their segmented block wall, which needs to now be filled back in.
That's a good example of why we don't construct things right up to the edge of the watercourse.
Yeah,
If we
well,
had floodplain, that would have expanded out into there rather than, taking all that out.
Yeah, there was no floodplain there before.
Yeah, there's no place for the water to go. It's just got to go up.
So we did everything else with Crete to protect it from getting slammed, and I remember going over that several times with the engineer, that there should have been a concrete wall behind the Versalock wall, or else use a cement wall to give it the aesthetics, but they claimed the water would never get there.
Yeah, I think that was before I commissioned, that was approved, and that was one of the things that...
But the water never got high. It undercut the bank. That's what happened. It's not that
It's
it
kind
came
of
up.
an example of a problem. There's a problem there,
Right. But it literally took out about almost 8 feet of the bank right in front of the wall, and you can see the walls now plopped. So backing that up also need emergency repair, folks, and we got to get something done. We got to be soon out there.
Are they going to be taking a wall down to start?
I
Because-
don't know.
Because if that's the case, they should start 3 feet below grade or something.
Well, you got to be in water.
Well, I know, but at least if it happens again, it's going to hit the wall, undermine it again.
The boulders that were in front of that area to stabilize it, I would say got moved. The problem is you've got a rubber-coated playground that wall is supporting. I mean, to take that wall out of there now is
Or that they have to build, I know the distance, if they build another one in front of it, and
or at
Pour-
least
and pour concrete.
pour some concrete or something
with a
in there.
retaining wall like a 2 foot.
Right. I think we can build a diversion in there, or not a diversion, a cofferdam, pump out the cofferdam,
Right.
and fill that area with concrete to be able to give a little bit better base again. But it's one of those things that I'm almost asking the commission to, under health and safety, and expediency that we can just move forward on this. And I'll,
Well, definitely, it's
Try to keep
it's
it.
playing up on top.
yes.
I mean, did the asphalt or the rubber mat cave in yet?
No.
Or no?
There's nothing to stop that wall from keep coming block.
I mean, those blocks are just hanging there. It's going to keep coming down.
Yeah, they will keep on, and if water got behind it, it's gonna wash everything out.
If we
behind
get
the
another
wall.
storm, you're going to be in big trouble there.
There's enough of the geotextile fabric. You know, they typically don't put it on the first 3 or 4 courses, but there's enough geotextile fabric and enough compaction that's behind here that I don't anticipate that whole wall doing that at all. I mean, I don't anticipate it. It doesn't mean it can't happen. I didn't expect to see those boulders either, but
Well,
they
as long as
did.
water doesn't get behind the wall, not undermine it, but to start dragging everything down.
Well,
That's
it's
what would
gotten
happen.
under it, it hasn't gotten completely behind it.
Right. Because you get water from the top going down through the gravel, then it's gonna start.
Right, yeah, with that rubber playground surface on there, I
Yeah.
don't think that's gonna happen.
Okay.
So, like I said, I'd like to be able, if you see some activity out there, it's just gotta be done.
Yeah, no choice.
Has to be done. Even if it's just nothing more than putting boulders in right now temporarily
Right.
until, you know, some kind of plan can work out, but I certainly will keep everybody informed of what's going on. 522 Wheeler Farms Road. We had a look at this, oh my. I'm going to say, December? November, December? December. I think it was December. December. This is, Wheeler Farms Road is out here. Wheeler Farms Road out here. The end of Wolcott Lane is over here. There was a proposal for a house here. There was a driveway coming down. There's 100-foot of road frontage here on Wolcott and 50 feet of road frontage out on Wheeler's Farm. So they got their 100 feet. Wetlands are confined to the back portion of Wheeler's Farms Road. No wetlands on the, there's the property line here. No wetland on this side at all. However, there was a lot of concern originally in why this didn't come before the commission last time for any type of action, is that we're trying to come up with a way not to flood the downstream property owner with the size of this driveway. Okay, so what's being done is there is road infiltrators swell down going into a yard drain, and then the driveway itself is going to act as a berm to take care of any heat flow. It comes down through, there's a very deep seep envelope underneath the driveway, and that's going to allow water to percolate down through, straight down or weep out slowly to a natural depressed low spot right here. And town engineers asked that they also swale this side and bring it down into this bowl that's down over here and eventually it will probably fill at some point and drain out into the curb line of Wolcott Lane, get down into the drainage system there. Tell me what you would like to do with it, please.
Did you say there's no wetlands here?
On this particular period.
Are there any wetlands going to be impacted?
No.
So, do we have jurisdiction?
We have jurisdiction over some drainage that is going to go down eventually to the Turkey Hill Brook, quite some distance away.
From the road? Where's the drainage going to Turkey Hill?
Well, it's going to go down Wolcott Lane, past Winnie Hill, head towards Herbert Street. And Turkey Hill Brook runs, check out if I don't want Hawkins' disease. There's actually, the Turkey Hill Brook is, kind of runs down through this ill-defined, it's kind of ill-defined, and meets up with it on Wolcott Lane as it comes down and around. But it's, I mean, several hundred feet.
Okay, so really what we would be looking at as far as our jurisdiction is additional water into the road.
Additional water into the road, that there is already a severe icing condition up on Wolcott Lane on the opposite side of the road due to ledge that keeps bleeding out, and the town is aware that they're, I believe, contemplating putting a basin in to intercept that ledge runoff and put it into the drainage system, which also when it gets down to Turkey Hill Brook again.
Okay, so we really want to have it on site.
And for the most part, it looks like the majority of that is going to be the case with the way they've designed this system. Now, I know the gentleman that is the adjoining property owner is very much the watchdog on this site, so that's taken them. I think they started this project in 1999. It's been a long time coming to get going.
The engineer designed infiltrators?
A detail page with your infiltrators. There's also infiltrators in the foot high, I think.
Well, if anything, it's going to help the situation out because the driveway's going to block the water, correct?
Yeah, it's supposed to act as a pump.
Right.
There's also roof infiltrator
Right.
in this area.
Yeah, I don't see any problem with it. I mean, it's going to help out the situation.
I wasn't going to require even an administrative application because there's, I mean,
Right.
but you can tell me otherwise.
Anything else?
No, just again, thank everyone in the town of Orange for not being beating us up too badly with all the rain that we had. It was a tough one for a lot of people.
I think everybody, a little bit of rain.
Well, just, I mean, we've just, by living on the lake and stuff, they actually closed Mallard Drive. And it was just something that, you know, we keep saying is going to be an issue, And the police closed it for pretty much most of that night. And it became a safety because then we couldn't have people that could get out because of the flooding.
Mapledale's closed. A portion of Westbrook Road was closed. And I think that was about it for closures in this town, which really is pretty amazing considering the amount of rivers that we have compared to what a lot of other communities suffered. And we didn't get the tornadoes that South Carolina got. So, all in all, the horrendous flooding that occurred on the upwalk down in the Greenbrier area there was, I mean, there was 30 inches of water in those people's basement. You couldn't even see the snowing at the end of a driveway. All you could see was the guides. That's a lot of cotton picking water. And you're watching the geese go in and out of people's garages. It was absolutely amazing. And again, that's probably by what the numbers I have was only a 25-year storm event, so I hate to think what a 100-year storm event would really truly do. It would go back to 82 again, which I believe by the record was approximately, I don't know how they calculated, but something like a 96-year storm based on the intensity and the rainfall over the 24-hour period. So global warming is here to stay, I think.
Hopefully we don't get one of those. Anything else? Walter?
If not, we move to adjourn.
Move that we adjourn?
Let's second. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.